The only thing that I knew that hovered, other than that, was a helicopter and the Navy's hovercraft. And I'm saying, oh, I said, what's it made of? He says, metal, like polished aluminum, polished steel. He said, you know, metal. I said, how big is it? He said, 20 to 30 feet. I said, no, I haven't seen it. He said, you want to see it? I said, yes. I said, I'd like to see it. He said, go out to the front of the hospital, he says, and look down at the flight line. He said, you'll see it. I said, with my luck, I said, I would go out there and it wouldn't be there. He said, I wouldn't say that. He says, I took my wife to the commissary and it was there 30 minutes later when I left. And I said, well, I'll ask. In a base where there's war conditions, regardless of where you're at, you're on 24/7. And if you leave the assigned spot, that's against the law, military law. So I asked the nurse who had asked the doctor if I could go out to the front and see it. She looked at the doctor, and the doctor said no, so I didn't go. 9 o'clock, go for coffee. Coming back from coffee, I'm following two young pilots. The one on the left is in khakis, the one on the right is in blues. The one on the left said, why the blues? He says, I'm the officer of the day. He says, I've been down at base ops all day. He said, waiting for the plane to come in. He said, Air Force One? He said, yes. Air Force One, that was the first time I heard Air Force One. I didn't know what it meant. I had to ask that too. Well, in the 60s, that was very common, but in the 40s, it was the first time I heard it. He said, well, what happened? He said, he landed, he turned around on the active and shut down. And we were told to turn off our radar. Why were you told to turn off your radar? I don't know. He said, we were told to turn it off, so we turned them off. And then the guy in the khaki said, I heard that the one that was brought down at Roswell was brought down with Doppler radar. And he said, I don't know. They continued talking. What happened after that? He said, they came out over the mountains, across the proving ground, White Sands proving ground, across the monument, and the guy on the left, again, the khaki guy said, I heard one landed at the monument. He said, the other one said, I don't know about that. I'm telling you what I saw. He says, two of them came over. One landed on the reactive in front of the plane, and the other one hovered overhead like it was protecting that plane. He got out of his plane, walked to the UFO, and the door opened, and he walked inside. How long was he in there? About 40 or 45 minutes. Could you see? Were they grays? He says, I couldn't see. I didn't have binoculars. Who had the binoculars? The tower. Could they see? No, they didn't have the angle. This is all going on while I'm walking behind them, probably no more from here to the lobby area. And as they were doing this, one of them said, did you see, the one on the left again, did you see the autopsy film? And the one on the right said, yes. Do you think it's real? I don't know. So it was available in 55. And he said, well, he said, does electronic waves, radio waves go through plastic? He said, why do you ask that? He said, because I think there's a radar unit in the nose of that airplane. And I'm saying, who are you talking about? I said, are you pilots? And they shut up, turned around so I couldn't read their names, and walked on. I went to the flight surgeon's office. At 11 o'clock, I went like I normally did to pick up the mail. Picking up the mail, a new officer, supply officer, said, Kirkland, I've been looking for you. He said, did you see anything down on the flight line? I said, no, but I'm qualified for emergency operation, first aid, all of this, graduated top of my classes. And I said, no. Do you need help? He said, no, I just wondered. At noon, Dorsey didn't show up after lunch. The nurse and Dorothea Thorenson both asked me, "Where's Dorsey?" I said, "I don't know. Sometimes if we're not too busy, he goes home and eats. He'll be here in a few minutes." 2:30 shows up, 2:45. Dorsey's not there at 2:30, but about 2:45 he shows up. I'm walking out for coffee, and I say, "Dorsey, where have you been?" He says, "At a meeting." I said, "Well, you better tell Dorothea and the nurse because they're wondering where you're at." After work, I'm in my barracks room, and I'm called outside to the back of the barracks because Air Force One is flying over the residential area at Holloman Air Force Base. That's a no-fly area zone. I ran out, looked for it. I had to jump up because the plane was flying low and it just passed over the roof of our building. Air Force One flew from Holloman at about, 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30. After that, I waited until supper, and from supper I went out and I looked at the flight surgeon's office, and the lights were on. I said, "I wonder what's going on," because part of my job is to check and make sure the lights go off. So I walked over, and there was Captain Reiner talking to a lieutenant colonel who was in blues. And he said, the colonel was talking, he says, "Bob," he said, "I was there on stage with him, standing room only, 225 people and supply hangar." And Bob said, Captain Reiner said, that he had heard that he had talked at the base theater. He said he might have been, because he only spoke for a couple of minutes, and then he left, and the base commander spoke for about 20. He could have had plenty of time to go over the base theater and come back. He said, "But I'm telling you is what I saw. Standing room only, in the supply hangar, 225 people each time it was there." And I said, "Who talked?" He said, "The commander-in-chief." I said, "The president." He said, "The commander-in-chief. You don't ask a lieutenant colonel again if it was the president." So I knew that. I said, "What did he talk about?" He says, "It's classified." I said, "How is it classified?" "Confidential?" He says, "Higher." I said, "Secret?" He said, "Higher." I said, "Oh." He says, "What's the O?" I said, "I'm only classified to secret. It's none of my business." And he says, "I would not say that if I were you." Okay? About 3 months after that, I was getting ready to go overseas, and I asked a bunch of guys that were there, and because I said, "I have never heard a president talk. Have any of you ever heard a president talk?" They said, "Yes." One of them said, "Yes." I said, "Who?" He said, "Eisenhower." I said, "Where?" He said, "The base theater." And another airman said, "Hey." And the conversation stopped, just like that. That was in 1955. I didn't believe in these things for 40 years. 1995, I was listening to a man by the name of Mike Murphy in Kansas City, and Mike Murphy was interviewing a guy by the name of Bob Dean. But Mike kept calling him Bob O'Day. Don't ask me why, I'm just saying that he did. Bob Dean said that he had talked to a man who was a crew member aboard Air Force One that landed at Holloman, and at Holloman, Eisenhower got out and went aboard a UFO. I said, "My God, I was there." I became a believer. And I started putting together this information and tried to give it to various people. I got some of the information to Mike Murphy and was interviewed on radio 3 times. I sent a letter of some of this material to Stan Freeman, and I got back a mimeograph thing that said he wanted to buy, "Do you want to buy my books?" I'm not really interested in his books, The reason I'm not interested in his books is because I know Eisenhower met with UFOs. Okay, so on